Have you ever felt that something invisible is about to happen, that a whisper from heaven is trying to reach your heart in the midst of chaos? Well, today, this feeling has a name, this restlessness has a source, and this message has an owner. God has sent you something serious to tell you. This is no joke. It's no coincidence that you found this video. Maybe you're going through strange days with feelings you can't explain. Bad news may indeed be on the way, but don't worry. Before fear paralyzes you, listen carefully. This message has come to prepare you, strengthen your faith, and put spiritual weapons in your hands. Because when the enemy comes with bad news, God responds with promises of restoration. Have you been facing humiliation in silence? Have you been wronged by those who should protect you? Have you felt abandoned when you needed help the most? This pain has not been ignored by heaven. This tear has not fallen in vain. The all-seeing God is about to intervene, but He wants you to understand the process, the purpose, and the miracle behind this battle. This video will reveal to you, step by step, why you were chosen, what God is restoring behind the scenes, and what He is preparing for your table, right in the presence of those who have mocked your walk. But be careful. This is not a message to be ignored or watched lightly. It is alert, help, and direction. So if this is messing with your heart, do not ignore. Subscribe to the channel now, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who really needs to hear this word today. Because maybe, just like you, that person is one step away from a breakdown or a miracle. Highlighted phrase from the video: the news may be bad, but God's promise remains greater than any storm. Write this sentence right now in the comments as a way of declaring in faith that no bad news will steal what God has already determined for your life. Leave your spiritual mark below. Whoever comments makes a commitment to heaven, humiliation, and injustice. No one likes to talk about it, but that's exactly where many stories of transformation begin, behind the scenes of humiliation. When you're judged by those who barely know you, rejected by those who should welcome you, and then mocked as if your pain were a joke, it's at those times that heaven is moved. It may seem like God is silent, but He's watching everything. Every cruel gesture, every hurtful word, every calculated abandonment. It didn't go unnoticed. Have you ever experienced that kind of pain that has no name? The kind that you keep hidden in your pillow, that no one notices during the day, but that consumes you inside at night. There is a loneliness that arises when we realize that not everyone will understand the process we are going through. Sometimes, not even those who walk beside us have any idea of the weight we are carrying in our chest. And the hardest part, it's when they try to summarize your entire story as a mistake, a bad phase, an unfair label, as if your identity were determined by a moment and not by your purpose. When this happens, we feel like hiding, stopping everything, not believing in promises anymore. But that's exactly when God begins to write the most surprising chapters of our story. Humiliation, however painful it may be, has a strategic place in God's plan. It exposes the hearts of those around you, but it also reveals where your faith is based. If it is just appearance, it breaks. If it is just talk, it collapses. But if it is true faith, it survives even injustice. And more than that, it grows, matures, and becomes stronger. There are people who think that because you kept quiet, you are weak. That because you didn't fight back, you are stupid. That because you still pray, even when everything is going wrong, you are foolish. But God honors those who remain in the right place, even when the ground seems to disappear, because true faith doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. It just remains. It doesn't matter if you were ignored, ridiculed, or left aside. Jesus Himself was rejected, betrayed, and unjustly crucified. But do you know what He did? He continued. What He didn't deserve, He endured, so that you today could have access to grace, forgiveness, and divine justice. So yes, you are going through something difficult, but that doesn't define the end of your story. Do you know why? Because heaven is not silent. God is seeing every detail. The mockery of those who said you won't make it. The words that hurt your spirit. The doors that closed in your face. And He is already preparing a response that matches your pain. Not just a defense, but a supernatural turn. But before the turnaround comes the confrontation, before the table comes the valley, before the honor comes the test, and you are in it now. Do not despair, do not abandon the faith, because what today seems to be just a time of silent humiliation will be remembered as the turning point of your journey. It is at this stage that the process begins to make sense, and if someone mocked you for still believing in prayer, keep praying. If they mocked your faith, keep believing. Because when God begins to restore everything, and He will, that same faith will be your strength, your testimony, and the bridge between your pain and your miracle. Divine choice and purpose. Have you ever wondered why certain pains seem to choose you? Why among so many is it your story that is so deeply cut? Sometimes we think that God has forgotten when in fact He is preparing something big. And do you know what the most disconcerting part of all this is? It is that even before you were born, God had already chosen you. This is not a spiritual exaggeration. It is a biblical reality. It is written, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." This means that your life did not begin on the day of your birth, but long before, in the heart of God. Your purpose was not improvised. Your journey, even with stumbles and tears, is connected to a divine calling that cannot be ignored. People see the present, the label, the phase, but God sees the whole. He knows there is something inside you that not even you fully understand, a strength that has survived so many falls, a faith that has not been destroyed even by the worst days. This strength has a name. It is the reflection of the eternal purpose that was placed in you when no one knew you existed. The pain you felt and still feel is not for nothing. It has a purpose. It may seem cruel to say this, but pain educates, reveals, filters, and drives. What seems like punishment today, tomorrow you will realize was training. And what hurt you today, tomorrow will be what empowered you to reach others with authority and grace. There is no true purpose without pain involved. That is why the chosen ones always bear scars. Moses was rejected. David was forgotten. Joseph was betrayed. Paul was persecuted. Jesus was crucified, and all of them, in some way, had to face loneliness, contempt, and trials before living the fullness of their calling. Do you really think your life is directionless? That it has no value? That it is just suffering after suffering? Breathe. God is still writing. What seems like loss today will be deliverance tomorrow. What seems like a delay may be protection. And what seems like punishment may be exactly the preparation you need to endure the honor that will come. Purpose is not fame. It is not vanity. It is not a beautiful stage with people applauding. It is the cross. It is surrender. It is faith even without applause. It is prayer even without an immediate answer. It is going through the process knowing that God is aligning you inside so that you will not get lost when the reward comes. So don't compare yourself. Don't think you're falling behind just because someone else's blessing came first. God is not late. He is patiently molding you like a potter molds clay because He knows you need to be prepared so you don't break when the weight of purpose manifests. You are chosen, even if they try to make you doubt, even if your self-esteem was broken back then, even if you believed you weren't enough. God has already approved you before anyone else rejects you. And it is this approval that sustains everything that is to come. Trust this. There is no wasted pain in those who are called. Every tear will be used as a seed, every injustice as a road, and every failure as a lesson. Heaven is committed to your destiny because God chose you, and what He chooses, He sustains, He honors, and in due time, He exalts. Restoration process. Do you remember everything that has been broken inside you? Those pieces of hope that were scattered after betrayal, that trust shattered by harsh words, that self-love that was lost along the way? Well, God remembers every detail. But what many forget is that our God not only sees what has been destroyed, He is an expert in rebuilding. But there is one detail. True restoration does not happen overnight. God does not work with shortcuts. He does not mask wounds. He heals them from the root. And this type of healing requires a process. The first thing He does is not give you back what was taken from you, but rather restore you. Because the miracle that comes from God will never be greater than the transformation that He wants to operate in the person who will receive that miracle. Maybe today you are feeling exhausted, tired of waiting, frustrated with promises that have not yet been fulfilled, wanting answers that are not coming. But what you may not realize is that God has already begun the restoration, not on the outside, but on the inside. He is rebuilding your faith, clearing your thoughts, renewing your emotions, and healing your deepest wounds. That's why you've been crying without understanding. That's why you're more sensitive, more restless, more aware of your vulnerability. The Holy Spirit is stirring things that you've tried to hide for a long time. Family wounds, childhood traumas, unresolved guilt. God doesn't ignore these parts, on the contrary. He enters them with light, with truth, and with a love that heals. And when God begins this process, He doesn't leave you alone. He puts strategic people along the way, a book that touches you in a different way, a message that speaks directly to your heart, a verse that jumps out at you and seems to have been written just for you. Nothing happens by chance. Everything is part of the process. And do you know what's even more beautiful? When God begins to restore, He doesn't return you to your previous state. It takes you further. He turns shame into honor. What was once a weakness becomes a testimony. What was once a trauma becomes a tool. God's restoration is like an old painting that the artist decides to touch up. Only instead of returning to the original, He decides to create a new masterpiece from the cracks. You will be respected by those who despised you. You will stand up with dignity before those who tried to break you. And most importantly, you will look in the mirror and recognize who you really are, without the labels of pain, without the burdens of the past, without the voices that diminished you. But remember, the process hurts, because it demands renunciation. It demands that you give up your pride, your desire for revenge, your attachment to what no longer serves you. It demands that you forgive the unforgivable, trust even when you are afraid, and keep walking when everything inside you wants to stop. But it is on this journey that restoration takes shape. So if today everything seems confusing, keep going. If the days have been quiet, pray more. If the tears insist on falling, give each one to God, because they are not being wasted. They are watering the earth where healing will flourish. And when this process is over, you won't even believe the beauty that will emerge from your pain. Public reward. Have you ever noticed how some battles in life are fought in secret, but the shame of them is out in the open? It seems unfair, right? We feel the pain in a closed room, but the humiliation becomes a stage. The process is silent, but the mockery echoes loudly. But God also has a peculiar pattern. He prepares comebacks in the dark and promotes victories in the light of day, because the reward that comes from Him is not hidden. It is public, notorious, and glorious. It is not pride nor spiritual vanity. It is righteousness. The word says that God exalts the humble. And when He decides to exalt you, it is not just so that people see what He has done in you, but so that they know who did it. The reward doesn't have your name on it. It has His name being glorified through your story. Remember Hannah? She cried. She was humiliated. Her worth was questioned because of her sterility. But what did God do? He honored that woman before everyone. Not only did He give her a son, but He made that son a prophet. When God rewards, He goes beyond what was asked, because He does not respond only with blessings. He responds with testimony. Maybe you've been discredited, called an exaggerator, a dreamer, someone who would never go anywhere. Maybe your faith has been laughed at, doors have been closed in your face, opportunities denied, your name forgotten. But what you need to understand is that God is preparing a table, and it will be placed in front of those who have looked down on you. This is not about revenge. It is not about disguised revenge. It is about honor, about the kind of turnaround that only heaven can do. When he says he will make you the head and not the tail, he is talking about spiritual visibility, about authority, about you walking in places where before you were forbidden to even dream. And this is not utopia. It is a promise. But be careful. Public reward requires inner preparation, because when the spotlights are on, motivations appear. God does not exalt people to massage their ego. He exalts people so that you can be a reflection of Him, so that when they see you victorious, people will remember where you came from, how faithful you were, how unshakable your faith was, even when no one believed. And yes, it will be public, because the process was public, the humiliation was public, the criticism was public. The silence was collective. And God saw all of this. He saw who mocked, who turned their backs, who applauded your falls. And He is saying, I will raise you up myself, and no one will be able to deny that it was me. This is not pride. This is reparation. This is spiritual justice. This is heaven saying, the time has come. And when that time comes, there is no use trying to stop it. Doors open, invitations come, healings happen, provision descends, and what was once scarcity becomes abundance. Because when God rewards, He doesn't just give what is needed, He pours until it overflows. So, keep going. Don't give up now. The scenery may look the same, but the backstage is busy. There are angels arranging chairs, tables being set, sets being assembled, and when the time comes for the curtain to open, you'll understand why you had to go through this valley. Because the reward will justify every tear, every humiliation, every weight. Faith, perseverance, and surrender. There are days when getting out of bed is already a victory. Your mind is tired, your heart is heavy, God's silence seems like a distant echo, and yet you carry on. That's where true faith lies. It's not the kind that shows off with pretty words on days of worship, but the kind that remains alive even when everything around you screams that it no longer makes sense. The faith that God honors is the faith that resists in silence, that insists in the midst of pain. Persevering is not about not feeling. It is about feeling everything and still continuing. It is about waking up without strength, but putting your feet on the ground and saying, God, I don't understand, but I trust. This simple and sincere phrase moves heaven because it comes from the bottom of a surrendered heart. A heart that has been hurt, frustrated, disbelieved, but that has chosen to not let go of God's hand. Perseverance often won't earn you any applause. On the contrary, it will put you in situations where you will seem crazy for still believing. People will tell you that you should give up, that you should have given up on everything already, that praying and waiting won't lead to anything. And in those moments, you will have to decide. Listen to the voices outside or the voice that burns within. And do you know what happens to those who choose to persevere with faith? They attract the movement of heaven, because God does not respond to anxiety, He responds to trust. It is not about deserving, but about surrender. And those who surrender, even without understanding, even without seeing, even without feeling, are saying, God, I do not need control, I only need you. This surrender is not easy. The flesh wants to understand, wants to control, wants to decide. But true faith says, Thy will be done, even if it doesn't feel comfortable right now. And when this surrender is sincere, God acts in a powerful way. What was stuck begins to move. What seemed dead begins to revive. What seemed forgotten begins to flourish. It is no coincidence that the greatest miracles have happened in moments of total surrender. Abraham, climbing the mountain to sacrifice Isaac, Moses standing before the closed sea, Daniel entering the lion's den. None of them had any guarantee that everything would work out. They just had faith, pure faith, faith that endures, faith that opens doors where there were only walls. It's the same with you. Don't wait until you feel strong to obey. Obey even when you're weak. Don't wait until you understand everything to trust. Trust even when you're confused, because it's in this place of vulnerability that God shows who He really is. He doesn't need your performance, He needs your heart. So if you are at your limit, wondering if it is worth continuing to pray, wait, believe, the answer is yes, it is worth it, because the promise has not been forgotten, the miracle has not been cancelled, it is being generated. And like any pregnancy, it requires time, patience, and resistance to pain. Keep going, persevere, surrender again and again, because the more you surrender, the more room God has to act. And when He acts, it is not with crumbs, it is with abundance, it is with presence, it is with renewal, it is with justice. Miracles, provision, and abundance. Have you ever noticed how God has a habit of surprising us? When all seems lost, He appears. When scarcity dominates, He multiplies. When the desert cries out, He sends manna from heaven. Because our God is not limited by circumstances. He owns everything, including the last word. And when His time comes to act, miracles happen in ways that no one can explain. Only glorify. Miracles are not manufactured. Miracles are received, and most of them do not come when we are in control, but when we have given up trying to take matters into our own hands. When all we can do is kneel down and pray, God, I need a sign. It is at that point of surrender that heaven moves. And often the first miracle is not external, it is internal. It is peace in the midst of the storm. It is calm when everything falls apart. It is hope when the world is suspicious. But God goes further. He is an expert in transforming little into much, scarcity into abundance, the impossible into testimony. Do you remember the widow of Zarephath? She only had a handful of flour and a little oil. To the natural eye, there was no way out. But her faith opened the door to continued provision. The table that was almost empty became a symbol of God's faithfulness. Maybe you are waiting for a job, a resource, a cure, an opportunity, an answer. Maybe you have prayed even in fear of being disappointed again, but God has brought you here to remind you He did not forget His seed, and he who sows in tears reaps with joy. The promise is still alive, and the harvest is coming. The harvester comes. Do you know that time when it seemed like everything was going wrong? When you sowed effort, faith, patience, forgiveness, and nothing blossomed? It was not in vain. No tear was ignored. No prayer was lost. No weight was wasted. Everything is accounted for before heaven, and what is coming is a season of response, where abundance will not just be material, it will be spiritual, emotional, and visible. And when I say abundance, I'm not talking about exaggeration. I'm talking about a table full of food in the middle of the desert, of open doors where there were no walls, of people who denied you becoming witnesses to your turnaround. God is the one who prepares banquets in the midst of wars. And He does this not to show you off, but to show that His faithfulness never fails. The secret: keep sowing, even when you're tired, even when you don't get applause. Keep praying, keep acting with integrity, keep waiting with faith, because the timing of provision is not determined by your worthiness, but by the celestial calendar. And when that clock ticks, nothing holds it back. Resources come, connections appear, the unexpected happens. The abundance that God is preparing is not just for you, it is for your home. It is for those who walk with you. It is for those who doubted and will now see with their own eyes that God does not lie. Because when He says He will open the windows of heaven, you better prepare your baskets, because they will overflow. New identity and renewal. After everything you've been through, it's natural to ask yourself, who am I now? When the pain builds up, The losses are repeated, and the scars become part of our routine. We run the risk of confusing ourselves with the suffering. We start to believe that we are what they said, that we are what we lost, that we are what hurt. But God doesn't see you that way. He sees you as someone under construction, not as a definitive failure. You may have been labeled as weak, disorganized, difficult, problematic, forgetful. You may have carried these words around with you for a long time, believing them to be your truth. But today, the sky declares something new about you. Your identity is not in what you have suffered, but in what God is restoring within you. What people see is limited. They see your reactions, your mistakes, your failures, but God sees your heart. He sees the effort that no one applauds. He sees genuine repentance, silent prayer, the desire to start over, even when everything seems lost. That's why He doesn't just heal you, He renews you. And this renewal is profound. It is not an emotional pat on the back. It is a transformation from the inside out. It is when self-esteem blossoms again. It is when you look in the mirror and for the first time in a long time, you can see yourself with dignity, not as a victim of life, but as someone chosen, worked with, and approved by God. Maybe you are still dragging yourself along emotionally, feeling stuck in who you were during the time of pain. But God is calling you to come out of that cave. He is saying, "Son, get up, it's over. Now it's time to take a deep breath and experience the new life I have prepared for you." And this new life begins with a change in your outlook. First, on yourself, then on the world around you. When God heals your identity, He also heals your behavior. The way you position yourself changes. The way you respond to criticism changes. The way you love, relate, dream, everything changes. Because now you know that you are loved, that you are worthy, that you are forgiven, that you are the bearer of a promise, not of a past. And this new positioning is visible. There are people who will look at you and not recognize you. They will say, "But wasn't he the one who cried every week? Wasn't she the one who kept falling?" Yes, she was. But now it's someone renewed by the Holy Spirit. Someone who went through the process, endured the desert, and came out of it with spiritual authority and a new vision. God doesn't just want to free you from pain. He wants to give you back your joy, your courage, the sparkle in your eyes. He wants to restore your boldness, your will to live, your contagious faith. This renewal is not emotionalism. It is something that is born of God's presence and grows every day, that you choose to align yourself with what He says and not with what the world insists on repeating. So, if you have been lost in the memories of what was, today the sky invites you. Allow yourself to be new. Allow yourself to believe again. Allow yourself to be who God dreamed and not who pain tried to define. The renewal has already begun, and the best is yet to come. Call to share. You have come this far. You have endured humiliation, faced injustice, endured silence, and cried prayers that no one heard. But God heard, God saw, God intervened. And now that He has raised you up, restored your identity, and prepared your table, He does not want you to simply enjoy the victory. He wants you to share, because honor, from heaven's perspective, is not a prize. It is a responsibility. When God exalts someone, He is not saying, "Now you are better than others." He's saying, "Now you are ready to lift up those who were left on the ground." The wound that hurt has now become a scar, and a scar is proof that it hurt, but also that it has healed. That is what gives you authority. The call to share begins where many stop, in the decision not to keep what you have received to yourself. Has God comforted you? Comfort others. Has God restored you? Talk about it. Has God provided for you? Teach you how to trust. Has God healed you? Be an instrument of healing, because a blessing that is not multiplied dies over time, but a blessing that is shared, this becomes eternal. Maybe you think you're not ready yet. that you don't know how to speak like others, that you're not prepared, that your story isn't that pretty. But the truth is that no one understands pain better than those who have been through it. And sometimes one word from you can heal someone more than an entire sermon. You just have to be willing. You just have to not be silent. You don't need a stage. The calling doesn't start at the microphone. It starts in the heart. It starts when you see someone down and instead of judging them, you reach out. It starts when you choose to pray for someone who is going through what you've been through. It starts when you say, I've been there, but God got me out of there, and He's going to get you out too. You know what's most powerful about this? It's that as you help others rise up, God continues to strengthen you. The more you give, the more He fills you. The more you share, the more He expands, because His source never runs dry. And when He finds someone willing to be a channel, He makes it flow without stopping. This is the phase in which your pain becomes a legacy. What seemed to destroy you will now sustain others. The testimony that seemed small will touch hearts, move heavens and awaken faith, and everything you have experienced, even what still seems meaningless today, will fit together like pieces of a larger puzzle. You were not healed just to feel better. You were healed to heal. So don't hide. Don't be ashamed of your story. Don't underestimate yourself. Heaven chose you, shaped you, and now calls you to be the answer. There are people waiting to hear your voice, waiting for the courage of your yes, waiting for you to say, I know how much it hurts, but I also know how God transforms. Because when a healed heart speaks, it doesn't just speak with words, it speaks with presence, with empathy, with truth. And that's what the world needs most today. Real people, people who love, who pray, who embrace, who understand, because they've been there. You are that person. You are that answer. And the call is already knocking on your door. Accept, walk, share, and let God use everything that once made you cry to now make others smile again. Now that you have listened to this message to the end, I sincerely ask you, what are you going to do with all this? Are you just going to watch and move on with your life as if nothing happened? Or are you going to let this word truly enter your heart and bring about a turning point in your journey? Because this wasn't just another message, it was an invitation, a divine call for you to look to the sky with more faith, walk with more courage, and understand that there is a greater purpose even in that which hurt you the most. God does not waste processes, and if He allowed you to live everything you have lived, it is because He is forming something precious in you. But now it's up to you. What you've learned here needs to become action. Faith that doesn't move becomes empty talk. So reflect, where do you need to start over? What still needs to be given up? Who is God calling you to reach with all He has already given you? You have everything you need to continue. God has already planted seeds of faith, promise, honor, renewal, and miracles in you. Don't ignore them. Cultivate them. Pray more. Talk to Him. And start living today as someone who truly believes in what has been revealed here. If this word touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone you love, someone who may be on the verge of discouragement, doubt, or giving up. You can be an instrument of healing in someone's life today. And of course, don't leave without subscribing to the channel and activating the bell. That way you won't miss any messages like this one, because if this one spoke to you, imagine the next ones.